Mary Catherine, you've got a baby. You want that baby to be smoking pot? Is it a he or a she?
Oh, okay.
Is it a he or
she? And I would rather she not smoke
When that
pot.
baby is 13, 14 years old, you want the baby to be smoking pot in moderation.
I'm answering the question by saying it doesn't have to be illegal because I can step in and handle things.
So
and
I'm going to say you don't want to answer. You don't want to engage.
Damaging than paternalism in a nanny state.
Mary Catherine, you're babbling. You don't want to engage in this conversation.
No, I'm saying clear words and making an argument to you.
You're babbling.
You step into the no-spin zone, you prepare for the tough questions, like, do you want your baby smoking marijuana? That was from a jaw-dropping segment on the O'Reilly Factor last night, which pushed a pretty astounding conspiracy theory from the right. You know, we've got the birthers who don't believe the president was born in the U.S., the climate deniers who don't believe the world is getting warmer, and now the marijuana truthers, conservatives who insist no one is arrested for marijuana possession. I first encountered these folks after my segment last week, in which I told a story about when I was once caught with marijuana at the 2000 Republican National Convention, but was spared by the cops, I think, because of the color of my skin and the privilege that's attached to it. That segment prompted the marijuana truthers to tell me, you idiot, no one gets arrested for marijuana possession. Well, last night we learned that Bill O'Reilly is among the truthers.
This is soft drug use. Why are you arresting and giving this kid a record? Especially minority kids, disproportionately. They're the ones who get arrested.
Only dealers, Juan. There's no mass arrest of users. No, they get a ticket, Juan. They get a ticket.
I don't think that's right, Bill. And this is not
a crime that is actively pursued by district attorneys. All right. I'm just going to discount that argument, Juan.
Okay, yeah, just discount that argument because really, it takes approximately 3 seconds, using the old Google machine, to find some anecdotal evidence rebutting O'Reilly's claim. You just Google marijuana possession arrests and lots of stuff comes up. But anecdotes are not data. So we wondered, does anyone keep track of this sort of thing? Turns out there's this obscure little outfit called the Federal Bureau of Investigation, or FBI for short, that does just that. It reported that more than 42% of all drug arrests in 2012 were for marijuana possession. That amounted to 1 arrest for marijuana possession every 48 seconds. That's more than 500,000 in that year alone. The thing is, there is a huge racial disparity in those arrests. While whites and blacks use marijuana at similar rates, blacks are arrested for possession way more often. Not for selling, for possession. The same offense as whites, and they are arrested at a much higher rate. Bill O'Reilly, of course, is not the first older privileged white guy to express a lack of understanding of the devastating impact that marijuana arrests can have. But we can thank him for accidentally reminding all of us of an important truth. Just because something bad doesn't happen to people you know, doesn't mean it doesn't happen at all. Joining me now, former president and CEO of the NAACP, Ben Jealous. Ben, Bill O'Reilly seems to have a thing about defending the honor of the war on marijuana. Like, he's really got a stake in this. I want to play this clip of him from the summer, more or less doing the same thing. Take a listen.
The message being sent to children is it's okay. When I was growing up and when you were growing up, all right, as children now, not once the Vietnam thing kicked in and drugs, sex, and rock and roll, but as children, we were taught that this was forbidden. It was not a good thing. The exact opposite message is now getting across. Our culture now is actually actively harming the most defenseless among us, the children. It is.
Well, there's some sort of throwback culture war revisiting the 60s thing happening here.
Yeah, look, I mean, Bill is just completely out of touch, and he really needs to get grounded in this issue. You're talking about one person getting, picked up by the cops every 48 seconds. And when he talks about our kids, and I say this as somebody who's a parent, right, who has young kids in my household, who is somebody who had a junior high school student with me for 3 years, my nephew. It was very hard for him to get a beer if he wanted a beer. But if he wanted pot, there was like 6 or 7 kids at his junior high school who were selling pot.
Right.
And so let's just deal with the real facts.
Right.
That one of the best ways to make it hard for kids to get is to start treating this like beer.
There's also this generational aspect to it, and I think you saw it in that segment. I thought it was so interesting. You have the young conservative Mary Catherine Ham, who I like quite a bit, actually, basically defending legalization, and you have O'Reilly, scowling at her, and this shows up in the data. 18 to 34, should marijuana be legalized? 67% say yes. 65 plus, 29% say yes, and those numbers basically flip around. It looks a lot like marriage equality. It looks a lot like a bunch of other issues.
No, look, that is precisely right. And the reality is that the day is coming when we will handle this much differently. But what's also real is that right now, quite frankly, Chris, as you talked about last week, we basically have two policies. You know, black folks are almost 4 times as likely to get busted for using pot as whites. That means that for whites, it essentially is legal. And for black people, it is very much not legal. You look at a state like Kentucky, blacks are 8% of the population and 36% of the people busted for using pot, even though, frankly, young whites are more likely to smoke pot.
So that is the part of this that I think gets lost in the defenders of the drug war is exactly this racial disparity. But if on the off chance Bill O'Reilly DVRs our show or his producers are watching, will you just tell them that it is the case that people really do get arrested for marijuana possession? That's all I want. Just a concession of this basic reality. That's it.
Look. We spend $3.6 billion a year in this country locking up people for smoking pot. We are busting people, as you said, once every 48 seconds. In some years, it's faster than that. In some years, it's been once every 37 seconds. This is a big issue. And the kids who get busted, their lives get harmed. Yes, some of them might get expunged. Hundreds of thousands don't. It really depends on the state that you live in. Sometimes it depends on whether your parents can afford a good lawyer. And for those kids, even until they're 18, when it might be expunged after, they cannot sign up for a student loan. They cannot, they have a hard time getting a job. There's a lot of employers out there who will actually hire you if you've had a DUI, but they won't hire you if you have a pot bust. And if it's not expunged, well, it just follows you for the rest of your life. There's a man who's a deacon in a church in my grandma's town, and he's a handyman and he's in his late 50s. And I said to him, one day, look, you're a genius. Why are you a handyman? And he said, when it came down to Chris, when he was 25, he's an older black man, he was busted for pot. And every hospital he has worked at, whenever they're taken over, they go and they look and they see if anybody's ever been busted for drugs. And because he was busted in his early 20s for one joint, he's been fired like a dozen times, and eventually he just got tired of being fired, and he became a handyman, even though he's smart enough and principled enough to be a deacon in his church.
Ben Jealous, thank you for dropping a little knowledge tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you, brother.
Coming up, the Rolling Stone piece that is making conservatives' heads explode.
He doesn't think anybody should have to work at all. He thinks the government should give paychecks out just to you sitting on your couch because you exist.
The he mentioned there, the one and only Jesse Meyerson, the author of that piece, will be here to respond ahead.